Greetings, class. This is Haskins. I'm here with Dan Borrero. Thank you for joining me and my boy Dan Borrero as we talk about real estate What are you doing? Real estate investing and entrepreneurship. I got to read my story, baby. I'm gonna be home for a few minutes. Okay. Dan, how you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. Always a pleasure to be on with you, man.
Yeah, man. So tonight, Dan Borrero has been in business, real estate investor since '89. I've been doing this since 2004, and we'd like to bring you some value to help you with your business, to help you put an action plan together for no charge. So if you've got any questions you'd like us to answer, please put them in the chat, or I'll put the link in the video description so you can come on live with us. Dan, what's going on with you this week, brother?
Same thing I was telling you when we were doing our IG earlier, how I had for those of you that don't know, we were discussing it last week. I have a condo in Florida in Altamont Springs, first floor condo. The property sits on a slab. The unit behind me had a water leak coming from their water line going to their ice maker. I went next door. Well, my tenant went next door, knocked on their door, and we were doing a live video on it at the time. So obviously there were people at home, but they refused to open the door. They did leave a note on their door saying there's water coming into to my property. I reached out to the HOA. The HOA tried to reach out to the owner several times. A day later, the owner responds in an email saying, "I'll get there on Tuesday." And so I had water coming into my property for 4 days. Now, as a result of the water coming into my property, I had to rip out a lot of sheetrock. I had to move out the appliances. I had to replace literally the entire floor in the dining room, living room, kitchen, where the washer and dryer was, which ran me about $6,500. They just finished today, and the tenant had to go rent the place for 5 days, right? So
Where, a hotel?
Yeah, at a hotel. The tenant just came back, and
Who paid for that?
the tenant did, because the tenant did have tenant insurance, apartment insurance, which is in my lease that I insist that they get apartment insurance. So the insurance company did pay for the tenant to go live in a hotel for the 5 days, as a result of him having property insurance. And the tenant was very accommodating. He agreed. He moved everything, all his personal items, all into the 2 bedrooms. Before he left, I had my worker go in there and change the locks, the doorknobs to locks that while the tenant was there. And then after he locked the rooms, he gave the tenant the keys. So the tenant felt secured with their personal items, right, in their bedroom. So now I have to fight with this person, and I'm definitely suing him because he's not responded to any attempts to communicate, which leads me to believe that he doesn't have insurance. Because if he had insurance, he would say, "Hey, Dan, here's my insurance policy. Call them up, put a claim against it."
Well, not even that, Dan. I'm like, even if he does not have insurance, wouldn't you want to at least do what's right? What's right karmically? Like, what you want to do, what a reasonable human being would do. Like, hey, man, what's going on? What can I do to help? I caused the problem. What can I do to help?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, this guy's a piece of crap. After looking at the pictures that the HOA sent me of his apartment, the apartment's a mess. So obviously they're accustomed to living like pigs, and I guess assume that everyone else should live like pigs.
I'm
So
sorry to hear that.
you can't argue it's stupid.
Can't do good deals with bad people.
No.
So you're gonna fix it out of your own pocket.
So yeah, now will the insurance company come after you in that situation from Deborah Jackson? I don't see how they can, because I didn't cause the problem. I'm trying to fix the problem, right? And I had to rip out that sheetrock, and I had to get professional commercial grade dehumidifiers, commercial grade heaters in there to prevent any mold from growing. And then I had professionals come in that mitigate mold possibility or mold, and spray their chemicals to make sure that there's no mold that grows in between the walls or underneath the floor before I could even start doing the renovation work. So again, I my tenant actually called me at 12:30 at night, actually sent me an email. I responded with a phone call. I responded with an email 12:35 saying to please call me. He called me, right? We spoke. The tenant was nice enough to clean it up. I instructed the tenant how to turn off the water main, thinking it was coming from my side. And when the tenant woke up in the morning, there was water all over the place again. So that's when I knew it wasn't coming from my side. But my plumber was there at 8:30 in the morning. And they called me at 12:30 a.m. My plumber was there at 8:30
Wow.
in the morning
Wow.
and ascertained that it was coming from the property behind me. And I can't, other than breaking the door down, I can't go in there and turn off his water valve.
Could you have called the fire department then?
They wouldn't respond because it wasn't an emergency.
The emergency is what, life's in danger or something?
Correct. Yeah.
So we're looking at going after this guy.
So I'm sure the insurance company, the insurance company probably won't go after anyone because it's a little bit of money. Only 5 nights of a hotel stay is all they paid for. So they would have to spend a whole lot more money than the 5 nights that they paid out.
No,
right? Now, if the tenant said, listen, I lost $100,000 in furniture, yes, they're gonna, I think they would probably come after me and I would be able to prove that I didn't do anything negligent. And that I had everything documented with emails and pictures that I was moving as quickly as I could possibly move to limit the damages, and then they would have to probably go after the person behind me who actually did cause the damage.
Talk about the stresses of just being a boss, man. I mean, this has nothing to do with your personal life. You sleep good at night, whether the place is full of water or not. Talk about just the
No, actually, I don't sleep good at night because I look at my tenants as not as tenants but as people.
I'm talking
And
about when I say it didn't interfere with your living arrangement personally. This is business stuff.
correct.
I'm just saying, talk about just the mental capacity of people that you got to have being a boss, because it ain't like it's affecting where you live. This is some of your business stuff. So
The reality is that I'm on the phone at 12:35 a.m.
wow,
and sending emails and text messages to my plumbers and my contractors to make sure that everyone's there at 8:00, 8:30 in the morning. That's the
deep,
first
man.
stop they go to, right?
That's so deep.
So, and then at 7:00 in the morning, I'm on the phone with them because 7:00 is a reasonable time to expect a plumber or contractor to pick up the phone. Real plumbers and contractors, they're on the road at 7 in the morning. They're not
Yeah,
in bed, right? So, and then I'm on the phone with them and then coordinating with the tenant to let them know, hey, these guys are going to be there like within the next half an hour. Make sure you up to let them in. So it's extremely stressful.
well, Dan, I just want my roundup homies to understand. People, Dan, get into the rental business. They all say, "I want passive cash flow. I want passive. I want
There's
to
no
get.
passive flow in this business.
I want. I want to get property so I can make money." I just want them to understand that things happen. It usually isn't as easy as people think it is. That's all.
I agree with you.
So,
Anybody have any questions, put it in the chat or come on live with us. That's what we're here for.
put the questions in the chat. Anybody want to come on? So, Dan, I had this thing with I know we were talking about the HOA situation that I had on IG. So for me, I was selling a property last week, Dan, and it come to find out the lady that I bought it from hadn't paid the HOA in 3 years. So she had $13,000 in back HOA fees. On top of that, she had $6,000 in back real estate taxes she had never paid. So I think she knew that when she sold it to me. So my title company missed the $6,000 in back taxes when we bought it. So they paid for that. But then when I went to resell it the other day, we got $10,000 in back HOA fees that were outstanding on top of the 13,000, which is what we thought. So fast forward to give you the short version. When we found out that when I paid $13,000 to the attorney representing the HOA at the time when I bought it in September, that money didn't get applied to the new HOA that took over in October. So now I have a bill with the new HOA company that is still outstanding. Now I'm going to try to pay it. So we found out that the money never got applied to that day. Has that ever happened to you?
No, because in your particular case, actually it has months later, right? Where I've paid it, and then the attorney who was holding the escrow on behalf of the HOA, that the HOA hired, I didn't hire him, right? The HOA says you got to give that money to the attorney, and then the attorney will give it to the HOA, right? I'm like, okay. 3 months later, they're telling me I got a balance. I think it was $4,000. I said, what's the balance for? They said, well, you took over this property. You took it over with its liabilities, and the previous owner owed us $4,000. I'm saying, like, yeah, but
I paid it already.
that was paid out of proceeds at the closing table. Oh, well, we don't have any record of that. And I said, okay, well, let me send it to you. Let me send you a copy of my HUD. And, well, as far as we're concerned, if we don't have it in our account, you owe it. And I'm like, it don't work that way.
Exact same thing they were telling me, Dan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So as I said, don't work that way. I have an estoppel that the title company got from you, saying with your letterhead, with your manager's signature, saying this is how much that apartment owes in back HOA fees, and this is how much we got to give to the attorney handling it. So that attorney represents you according to your documents. That's between you and your attorney. Sure enough, 2 days later, I did get an email saying it's all rectified or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But in Kris Haskins' case, he got stuck, which is a very unusual situation where, and let's just explain it in real layman's terms, because a lot of people may not understand how boards work. HOA board, homeowner association, right? All the owners elect board members. Those board members are could be the treasurer, the vice president, the secretary, right? It's usually 5 or 6 board members. Then those board members, depending on the size of the community, many times, if it's a big community, they hire a property management company. And that property management company is in charge of making sure that homeowners are not violating the rules and regulations and sending out the violation notices, collecting the HOA fees, keeping the accounting of it, making sure that the reserves are all up to par, making sure that there's no code violations, hiring the contractors, managing the contractors, whether it be the landscapers, the painters, the roofers, the water main people, the people who take care of the sprinkler systems, whoever that is, right? The tree trimmers, whoever that is, right? Now, in Kris Haskins' case, Company A was hired to do the day-to-day management stuff by the HOA. But the Company A got fired. And Company B now needs the records from Company A. Company B is a new company. Kris Haskins fell in between the process. So that's why the money too may not have been there.
It's really weird, Dan. Can you imagine you go to sell something and you paid $13,000 2 months ago, and they say you owe another 10? It was rough.
Yeah, exactly.
It was rough, man. So we got a question here. Hit that like button, y'all. What y'all doing? I don't see. I got 30-something people on here and 4 likes. This is from Admin Flowers. What's some of the best ways to find off-market deals? I'm doing cold calling from prop stream lists, but it is a struggle. Yeah, that's gonna be wow. You're gonna have to do well. Cold calling, from my experience, you got about every 2,000 calls, you got maybe 10 that are okay, and then you narrow it down to 4. And if you can close those, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough. Dan, you want to go?
I think you're much better qualified to answer that question than I am, because you do a lot of. Kris really thinks outside the box with this. Plus, he spends a lot of money finding leads. So I think Kris is much better qualified to answer that than I am.
So, we do PPC, pay per click, and pay per lead. I'm paying about $300 a lead now. So we spend anywhere between $6,000 to $7,000 a month on leads. But I gotta tell you, I still, like, January, I didn't buy anything new. So I mean, it's just part of, like, I know every year. It's crazy for me to say this. I know I'm gonna spend at least $60,000 to $70,000 on leads, right? So I mean, you got to make a decision. Do you want to spend money or effort? So if I had no money, I would just focus on
Effort.
what'd you say?
If you have no money, you got to focus on effort.
Effort. Yeah, if I got no money, so I'm looking for the highest motivated people. That's going to be probates or people that have inherited properties and foreclosures. Man, that's the only thing I can really say for you, my brother.
There's a question here from Deborah Jackson. When should you consider hiring a management company? I think that's a personal question because I manage my own properties, even though I'm in New York. I manage my own properties from here to Florida. But I have a machine in place. I have the skill sets that I've developed over time. I wasn't born with these skill sets. I made a lot of mistakes before I was able to acquire these skill sets. Um, it all depends. If I had a 9 to 5 job and I was investing out of state, I'm going to go get myself a property management company. Yes. If
Yeah.
I have a 9 to 5 job and I'm investing here in New York, I'm not going to get a property management company because I want to manage it myself because I want to learn the process. I want to develop those skill sets so that if I ever have to get a management company, I'll know when they're robbing me or when they're telling me the truth because I've actually done it. So I think that's a personal question. Everyone's got a different, if this is your full-time job, I wouldn't hire a management company because you want to learn. You want to develop those skill sets. And the only way that comes about is with the experience. Now, later on, sometimes you have to hire a management company to alleviate you from this side of the business so that you could grow the entire business. But that's a you decision, and you're the only one who could determine when the right time is.
I still think once again, Dan, I think people. I'm not saying this question is for that, but I think people look at it as this one size fits all. So, like for me, I wouldn't. I don't even know what I would have a property manager do because I don't manage no tenants. So Dan, both of us run our businesses a lot differently. Neither one of us have property managers, and Dan's a full time landlord, and I'm just a bank. So it could work. I'm a
Yeah,
firm.
we approach it totally differently. So, it's a matter of what works with your personality, your risk tolerance,
Yeah.
um,
Time.
what your obligation is reference to time to your family versus your business. There's a lot of variables, and what may work for me doesn't necessarily mean it works for you, and vice versa.
Yeah. Good point. Oh, she retired. Okay. Well, shit. You might want to go ahead and manage it yourself. Should I get a trust? Deborah, should I get a trust before I get properties? I wouldn't worry about it. I would worry about looking at some leads. Like if you're new to the get business, y'all don't get. My mentor used to say, Chris, you playing business. You playing business. So I don't want nobody here. Me and Dan want to get y'all straight to a check. Playing business means I'm getting all my LLC paperwork set up. I'm getting business cards. I'm getting website set up. Getting logo. All that shit. I promise y'all, completely irrelevant. Because I had
Irrelevant.
none of that. I'm gonna ask Dan. I had none of that when I was
I
doing
didn't
deals.
have any of that.
I was doing deals with my name left and right. I'm like,
So
shit,
was I. So was I.
yo. I'm like, I think there's a difference between somebody that has to do deals and somebody that's kind of getting the game that they want to get in the game. Because it won't no time for me to set up no LLC or logo or none of that. I'm like, man, I need to pay these bills.
Look, the reality is my first 10 properties were under my name.
And you know what, Dan? I applaud you for that. At least you took action. You screwed up a little bit, but you took action.
They were under my name, and then I realized
Me
that
too.
if I put it under LLC, my mortgage rates would have been about anywhere from a quarter to 5/8% higher. My closing costs would have been anywhere between 10 and 20% more. And I was like, screw that. I need to create wealth. I need to create
Money.
equity. I need to create cash flow. So I took the risk in putting them under my personal name. Now, later on, I then switched them all over to LLCs or S corps, depending on what was most beneficial to me, tax reasons at the time. And I created that additional layer of liability blockage against me. But in the beginning, man, I tell people, well, somebody's like, well, I'm going to formulate my LLC. I'm going to then do my
Holding company.
logo, and then I'm going to form a holding company, and then I'm going to
Wyoming.
form a trust so that the trust holds the holding company versus, and the holding company is paying the LLC for the management. And I'm like, how much is that costing you? Oh, not a lot, about $15,000. I said, how much is it costing you to the person who taught you that? Oh, not a lot, like $5,000. I said, so you spending $20,000 and you ain't got shit. That don't make no sense to me. I could take that $20,000, go put it as a down payment. I got my first property. I'll worry about that other stuff later. You know, so what do you protect? You got nothing. What are you protecting? Nothing.
Good point, man. Good point.
You know, so create the wealth, and then all that falls into place as you go along.
That is true, Dan. I know guys, I know multi-millionaires that still own property in their name, right? I don't think it's the best thing to do, but
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, but yeah.
I'm just saying I know them. I know them. Deborah, Israel. Good evening, Dan and Chris. Do we have any experience with DSCR loans? I think Dan called them the no-doc loans back in the day. That's the only thing I can remember.
Yeah, so
Is it the same
funny.
thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. So somebody asked me that about a year ago about a DSCR loan. I was like, what is that? And I think it's a debt service. I don't know what it is, what it refers to.
Coverage.
Listen, guys.
Debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah, listen, the reality is this. There's nothing new in this business. That shit existed back in 1989. I did my first DSCR loan, quote unquote, the new name for it,
Like
back in 1990.
House hacking.
You know, it was called back then no documentation loans, where for people who were self-employed with cash businesses who would have like large down payments, we couldn't show our income tax returns because our income tax returns look like we paupers, right? So, but you know, if the property made sense, the bank would do the deal, especially with large down payments. So, you know, back then they were just called no doc loans. You know, it's like somebody was asking me about the BRRRR system like 4 years ago, and I was like, "What's that?" And they explained it to me. I said, "So that has a name?" You know, I said, "That's not new. All the rich people use this. It's a big secret." I said, "Shit, I was using that when I was a pauper back in 1990, and I didn't. It didn't have a name then. You know, it's like there is nothing new in this business. There's a lot of guys out here coming up with these acronyms to make it appear new, but there's nothing new in this business."
All right, yeah, I don't have any experience with it, man, but I would say give it a try, as long as you don't over leverage yourself.
Yeah, don't over leverage. Whatever you do, don't over leverage.
Philip, what are some tips for getting private money?
That's all you, Chris.
Yeah, so Philip, first tip I would say is get out of your own way. Don't be nervous and never directly ask anybody for money. Don't ask them directly. So if I was hanging out with Dan, I would ask Dan, you know anybody that's interested in getting 6 to 8% on some money, investment capital that's secured by one of my real estate deals? So Dan,
That's what you would ask me.
that's what I would ask Dan. Like if I was just talking to Dan, I was at dinner with him or something. I would say, Dan, do you know anybody that's interested in getting 6 to 8% or a high rate of return secured by some of my real estate deals? And Dan can't tell me no because I didn't ask him directly. So he can either pass or play regarding referring me to somebody, or he can refer himself. So Philip, I think the biggest thing, and including when I first met Dan, the biggest thing we got to get out of our own way with asking for money. Now I have no problem asking. In fact, I don't even really ask people. People volunteer to give us money now. But back in the day, I had pride too. I'm like, I'm Kris Haskins, man. I don't need to borrow no money. I mean, what you doing? So we can all borrow money. It's not making you're not less than. You're creating an equal exchange. All right.
Chris, I got to attribute Kris Haskins for changing my mentality with this back in 2019. And he was like, I said, but Chris, he goes, Dan, it's people who probably drop dead getting in line to give you money.
Give you money, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, why? And he's like, you got a road behind you. I remember that conversation like it was yesterday in Dallas. And it was Kris Haskins that took my mentality, changed my mindset, and said, wait a minute, he's right. I'm not asking for a favor. They're making money more than they're going to make in the bank, and it's secured against investment property. And I'm the guy who makes shit happen. So I'm actually doing them a favor, and my whole mentality changed in reference to that
There you
because
go.
of Kris Haskins.
So even Dan Borrero, who doesn't need to necessarily borrow a bunch of money, so he's not. Dan, do you find that you get more, you attract more financing when you don't need it?
I find that when I needed the money, nobody would lend it to me, and now that I don't need it, everyone's standing online and throwing it at me, and that's just the reality of life.
Yeah,
Now I rarely use private money. I rarely use any. I try to mortgage my rather. I try to be the bank on my own properties because I'm greedy. I want to keep every red cent. I know everybody says, "Oh, you should use other people's money," and I'm like, why? I'm so confident there's not a deal that I do that I'm not 100% confident with, right? So when I do use other people's money, I'm sorry, what was the question?
and the question was, why I asked you, do you find that e- your people want to give you money now?
Oh, okay,
It's
yeah. So
easier to attract it now when you
right,
don't
the
need it.
problem isn't getting the money now. The problem is whose money I want to take.
There
Uh,
you
right, I don't want to take money from people that are calling me up every day. Nah, I don't want that. Because while I'm talking to them, I'm not doing what I need to do to move the property along to get it to the finish, right? To the finish line. So, I'm not calling and I won't take money from anybody that is like that needs that money right away, right? Yeah, that's just not what I won't do. There's a that they have to have a certain personality. They have to have a certain personality that I'm willing to work with, and it's got to be money that they don't need like over the next 3 months. Because I can say to them, I can have your money back within 6 months to a year, but my contract's going to be for 24 months, just in case something goes wrong that is beyond my control. I have time to rectify it, get the property back in the right track, and then sell it or refinance it to pay that person out, right? So that's it. There's certain criteria on whose money I would take.
It's either, I don't know if it's either discretionary or non-discretionary money. So you don't want to borrow money from somebody that needs it. So it's easier to borrow money that somebody has set that money away. And that's a skill. I think everybody needs to have that anyway. Now you need to have an account, an investment account. This is it. You don't touch it. Would you?
Precisely.
Yeah. Kathy, do you have any Deborah, do you have any insight on tenant friendly versus landlord friendly states? Dan, you better at that.
Uh, Without a doubt, stay away from New York City. Um,
Deborah says same
I
with Jersey.
Yeah, I have properties in New York City, but I'm in a different situation. I own my properties for years. I got no mortgages. Um, I rarely go to tenant housing court with my tenants because of the vetting process. A vetting process is extreme. It's extremely detailed. Chris will tell you. Um, I'd rather leave an apartment empty than rent an apartment to somebody I'm not 100% positive with, right? And
Oh,
actually, I have a situation like that now. I have an empty apartment for 2 months. I've had over 30 applications for it, and it's not that the apartment's not rentable. The problem is me, right? Not me. The problem is the applications I've received, right? So I will leave an apartment
me too.
empty because I sleep a whole lot better having an empty apartment than having a tenant that's not paying me.
And that's something, Dan. I've been there, man. Taking bad tenants, dude. That's the worst mistake you could make.
Yeah. So don't take, even when you're desperate, do not make a decision out of desperation.
Let the damn. If you can't pay the mortgage, I promise you, just let that shit get behind a
Yeah,
bar.
listen, there are plenty of states that are landlord friendly or at least fair on both sides. The southern states, look, this is the tip, and this is not a political statement. Democrat states are 99% all tenant friendly and screwing landlords every which way possible. Republican states, you ain't paying your rent. It could take me like in Florida, 2 months, 3 months the most. I don't have a problem with that. But in New York, it could take me 2 years. That's outrageous.
I
Not collecting rent for 2 years, right?
couldn't
So,
imagine.
and again, that's not a political statement. I don't want to see no political garbage on the comments.
Let me
It's
bring you
not a
around
political
that, Dan.
statement.
Can I take you political for a few seconds?
It depends because you know how angry I get, but go ahead.
Dude, my wife asked me the other day, do I think Trump could win? And I'm like, I really think he's got a possibility of winning, Dan.
So do I.
I really do. And I'm like, do I even, when I think about Biden, I think about all the money we've sent to Ukraine, makes me want to go in the bathroom and throw the F up. And then I look around on how little support I've gotten from my government. I got a little bit, but not much. I just don't know if it's fair, man.
So I'll tell you how I look at it. I am a proponent of fighting against communism and dictatorship. I don't care where it is in the world. Because communism and dictatorship uh, is a cancer as far as I'm concerned. It's a cancer against capitalism. And I
Okay.
will fight for capitalism any day of the week because as a result of capitalism is what's afforded this Puerto Rican kid with a special education, a shitty education, with severe dyslexia to make a really good living and provide a really good life for my family. So, but the other thing is this. I also look at what are the benefits, financial benefits. The financial benefits is that the most of the money that went to Ukraine went in arms, right? And those arms were all manufactured here in the United States of America. And who manufactured those? Who was the labor force? Americans. Americans. So it just got recycled back into our economy, if you really look at it, with the majority of that money created a shitload of jobs. Now, do I believe that Biden is a great president? No. Do I believe that, I personally believe this. The next election is not, I don't think people should look at it whether we believe in Biden's policy or Trump's policy, or who has been more effective or ineffective. The next election is going to be, are you voting for our Constitution or are you voting against our Constitution? Because Trump is the only president in the history of the United States who has called for the suspension of the very same Constitution that he took an oath to. Now, I'm not saying who I'm voting for. I'm just telling people, think long and hard. What agitates me is with the millions of people we have in this country, why do we have these two old men that have clearly showed that they both have dementia or cognitive issues?
Yeah.
Right? How is it possible out of the millions of qualified people in this country, we only have a choice of these two old guys?
That's not, yeah. That's a bigger problem than I think that we can even unpack tonight.
Correct. So yeah,
All
again,
right.
and I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I don't believe that either party has our best interests at heart.
The Ascending Ancient says, can we briefly discuss the framework on opening a trust bank account with an EIN or other ways?
That's on you. That's all you, Chris. You're good. That's your avenue.
Yeah, the only trust, the Ascending Ancient, the only trust we use is land trust, which is a grantor revocable trust that doesn't get a bank account. All the payments are made out to the beneficiary that own the trust, so it flows through to the beneficiary's EIN or your social security number. That's as far as we go. Oben King, do you have any tips for finding labor in small towns for sub $100,000 Section 8 rental rehabs? Dan?
Well, what I normally do is I walk around and I look at people working. I see how they're running their job sites. For instance, if I see a roofer and I see they're not walking around with shirts or music's blasting, they're all cursing at each other, the job site's dirty, I'm not going to use that roofer. If I see the roofer's got 8, 9 guys on the job, he's got clean trucks, the job site's clean, everybody's got their shirts on, no loud music, everybody's working, they're not fighting with each other, they're not cursing at each other. I'm going to walk up and start talking to the homeowner to see if they actually like the results of this roofer. Did they bother you for any money? Were they here on time? Did they come when they said they're going to come? You know, did they try to come up adding more more money to the job? And were they polite? These are the things I'm asking people, right? If you really want to know where to go to, if you need a plumber, for instance, I go online and find out where the local plumbing supply house is. And I'm at that local plumbing supply house at 7 a.m. And I parked across the street and I'm just watching, right? I'm watching to see who gets there. And plumbers, when they get there, they out of that van, they jump running in there, getting whatever they need to get the hell out to get to their job site. That's the plumber I want to talk to, right? So this is where you go to. You need an electrician, go to local electrical supply house, but make sure you're there early because the good guys start early.
Yeah, they're gone.
They start early.
Sometimes them fools be done by 1 or 2 o'clock, don't they, Dan?
Yeah, because they're getting the job early, right? They want to get on the road before traffic hits to get to the job site. So when people are actually just getting to work, they're on the job already an hour and they didn't spend 2 hours in traffic, right? These are guys that think efficiently. These are the people you want to work with.
Yeah, and a lot of guys do not like. Dan, tell them how many hours you can waste in Home Depot or Lowe's if you go at the wrong time, or even if you do go. Yeah.
When I go to Home Depot, I leave my house at 5:30.
Dude,
If I got to go to Home Depot before getting to a job site, I leave my house between 5:15 and 5:30 because I want to be out of Home Depot no later than 6:30 or 6:45 on the road to that job site.
Home Depot will destroy your day. You could stay in Home Depot for hours. CING. Hold on. Oh, Jeffrey, Dan, what is your goal for 2024, and what is it that you need?
I'm going in a little bit of a different direction that I'm not willing to share right now. And I mean, Kris Haskins and I have spoken about it. But I'm in a different part of my life, right? So the direction I'm looking to move my business in is coinciding with that part of the life I'm in, right? I had an accountant, Mr. Hyde. He died when he was 96. He was my accountant until he was 94. My accountant for 30 years, right? And he stopped working at 92. But I always kept in touch with him. I'd speak with him twice a month, even after he retired. And I remember Mr. Hyde saying to me, life changes every 10 years. And if you don't change with those changes, you're going to be miserable. And if you don't prepare for those changes, you're going to even be more miserable. So I take Mr. Hyde's advice in reference to that to heart. And I know where I'm going, where I want to be, in the next decade of my life, if I should live that long. And I know there's changes coming because the reality with age comes changes, right? I'm closer to retirement than Kris is right now. I'm 60 years old. So I don't want to work. I mean, I love what I do, but I don't want to work the hours I currently work anymore. So that's why I don't want to really share those goals, but I hope to be sharing it with everybody in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I'd like to know that, Dan. I mean, I would love to see Dan Borrero just driving around. For me, like when I'm 60, all I want to do is drive around and look at sites and yay or nay. Like I want to just be the money guy for these guys, man. I mean, I don't see for me. I would just like to be a lender.
There you go, guys. That now you know Kris's goals.
I'm just telling you, for me, you know what I was thinking? I was in church the other day. I'm like, Dan, financing has got to be the easiest business in the world, dog.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? Because think about it, you're financing people in the hopes that they pay you, but if you do it right, you have assets to protect it, right? I looked at a property. Check this out. I looked at a property. This was interesting. I looked at a property uh, that was taken over by a company that does private money.
They repoed it.
They repoed it, and apparently they have a history of repoing a whole lot of properties. So, which leads me to believe that when they look at a deal, they're not looking at the deal as much as to make money on it rather than make the more money on the repo side, because they had a whole lot of repos when I went and looked at the tax records. So that's obviously their market, their strategy.
That's a big business, man. Loaning money to high risk people.
Yep.
That's a business. Well, damn, I ain't want to go there. I'm just saying, let's just say we just created 10 mil today cash. And all you got to do is loan it out. I'm just thinking how with the knowledge that you have, you're going to make sure you loan out, below market value. You're going to make sure the borrower has an exit strategy. They know what they're doing. They got a roll behind them, all that stuff. You know who to call. How easy would it be for you just to get money working quickly on the street? If it ain't, it don't got to be you doing it.
It wouldn't be difficult at all. But, I would have to take a back seat to that to an extent. My
What do you
partner
mean?
would have to be more involved on the front end because I don't know. I have a difficult time renting people my apartments. Imagine me giving them money.
Well, it's not even giving them. You got to lean against the house. You can foreclose on the house.
No, I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you, but it's like when people come to me from my apartment and say, "Why are you so difficult?" I said, "I'm not difficult." I says, "But I'm giving you this door. This door to me is worth $250,000, and I'm saying to you, here's my property, in hopes that you take care of my property, right? Hopes that you pay me, that you don't wreck my property that I work so hard to achieve to buy that property." Now, this is the other thing I want. We're going to go in a different direction, Chris. I'd love for you to tell me what you think. Chris and I don't own property. We own the right to manage that property.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I want the audience to truly understand this. This is deep. If Chris and I go buy a house for $100,000 cash, we got no mortgage. We renovate that house for another $50,000 cash. We got no mortgage. We rent that property, but for whatever reason, we don't pay our taxes. There's a tax lien that's put against the property, and that tax lien is sold at the auction. Now, whoever owns that tax lien has the right to charge us for the tax lien in addition to interest. If we don't pay that for whatever the reason is, they take our property. Now, we own the property. We don't have a mortgage on the property. We renovated the property. We don't own the property. We own the right to manage that property while we're alive.
Wow. That's deep, man. That's deep, Dan. You know what? When you really swallow it, dog, you got to get over it.
That's all we do. We have the right to manage that property and try to make it profitable while we own it.
That we either manage it for ourselves, we live in it, or we pass that management over to somebody else, but we have to pre-screen them like an employee almost to make sure that they're good managers, and we got to manage the managers.
Correct.
Wow. Damn, you went deep on that one.
That was deep, right?
All right, TJ, what do you think about going after probate property? Yeah, I would. Good leads. Israel, how would you structure a private money of 200,000 for a down payment on $1 million multifamily, a mortgage the property based off the income it generates?
That's a you question, Chris.
Yeah, how would I structure private? All of my private money deals are no payments, whether it's long term or short term. So even if I borrow 200,000, I would have either quarterly payment. So let's say the payment's 1,000 a month. I would pay 3,000 every 3 months, because I want to make sure that I can get the property stabilized and get it cash flowing first. That would be the only way I would do it. And lenders don't care. Shoot, they don't care if they get the money today or 90 days. They don't care. As long as they get the money. Kathy, I'm trying to rehab several houses in a rural community. Oh, trying to find people to work. It's having a problem. Jeffrey says lending is the way to go. That's right. Deborah's with you. Miss to beloved. Even if we pass to our kids have the right to manage. That's true. Yeah, you're just managing, man.
Yeah, we're just managing it, and you got to then hope. And then the thing is, if you didn't teach your kids skills to manage it, they're just gonna piss it away and lose it anyway. Which is, the reality is, it's unfortunate.
Ain't no class gonna help you with that. Ain't no training gonna help you with that.
I'll use an example here. So I used to go to a mechanic, right? And the mechanic was the main mechanic, and he had like 12 bays, this big mechanic shop, and all his bays were always filled. There was tons of cars outside waiting to get in, right? And people would get there early in the morning on their way to work to the train station, leave their keys, and then when they came back at 5, 6 o'clock, the mechanic, of course, wasn't there. Him and his wife were no longer there, but they had a worker there that was just, all the bays were closed. Nobody was working except one guy in the office, And his job was to collect the money that people owed for the services that were provided for the day, right? Whether credit card, cash, whatever that was, and hand people over their keys, right? And every time I walked in there at night, he would be in there cleaning the office, sweeping outside. He was, keeping the place clean at the same time providing a service to people coming home from work, right? So, and then on Saturdays, he was open as well. And now the parents pass away and the two sons take control of this property. Now, the parents were there for like 40 years, right? And in the 40 years, when they first started there, it was only like 4 bays and they were renting. And over the 40 years, he bought the land next door, bought the land behind the place, right? He also opened up a car wash next door on another piece of land that he bought. They kept expanding. They kept feeding the business, right? The parents, they kept feeding the business, right?
You gotta do it, man.
Now, the two sons take over. Do you know within 2 years the business was out of business?
They're living off the profit.
They were living off the profit. All of a sudden, when I get there, the parents used to have their cars parked across the street, right?
I get there. Front.
They're parking right in the best 2 spots. A Lamborghini and a Porsche.
That's the stupidest thing you can do.
Right? So then they don't open on Saturdays no more. And then they don't want to open anymore at 6:30 in the morning. They want to get there at 8 o'clock. Well, most people are on the train on the way to work by 8 o'clock in the morning in New York City. They need to drop off the car before they go to work. Right? So, do I feel sorry for them? No, because they grew up in the business and they watched their mother and father work like they really worked their lives off, right? And they weren't willing to put in the same work. And they lost the business. Actually, from my understanding, they took a loan against the property, even though it was paid for, and they also lost the property to the bank.
You know what, Dan? I think you said it best earlier, putting money back into the business. I don't know if we understand that concept. Like a lot of people, they get in business because they want money for themselves. Like, remember we said invest first and then spend the rest. I think that has to come with time. I don't know if anybody's just bored.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you, these kids were taught that. It's just they chose not to live it, right? So I was just speaking to someone that knows one of the brothers, and now he drives a bus for the city of New York. So they went through millions of dollars. Both brothers went through millions of dollars.
Well, that guy that came on earlier, Dan, when I was we didn't talk about it. I guess we could real quick, and then I'll let you go. I think very rarely do we have a borrowing problem. Like I just don't know if you can borrow your way out of fixing a problem, Dan. I get real when people tell me I just get real squeamish, man. What about you?
I agree with you, man. I think the thing is when someone says to me they want to borrow because they want to get something they can't afford. Yeah. My question always is, instead of borrowing it, why don't we look at ways that you could do something for yourself so that you can afford it, right? Stop talking about stop saying you can't afford rather than saying, what do I have to do so I can afford it, right? And borrowing is not always the best way to do that. Would you find, well, there's a question here, Jeffrey Long, and I know what your answer is going to be. 49ers versus Chiefs, question mark. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
First of all, I don't know what he's asking. I have no idea about 49ers or Chiefs. What are they? Are they football teams?
Yeah, they're going to be on. They're playing in the Super Bowl.
Okay, I'm just learning that. I have no data to base any of that on. I'll be probably looking at deals or something. I have looked at 0 minutes of football. I'm proud to say that another season gone by, Dan, with 0 minutes.
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I used to play football when I was in high school. I don't watch it, and I don't watch it. If I happen to be hungry on a Sunday and the TV's and I can have myself a nice hero with some chips and a beer, Yeah, I'll sit in front of the TV until I finish eating my lunch, right? Kris Haskins and Dan Borrero don't give a shit who wins the Super Bowl. Kris Haskins and Dan Borrero don't watch winners. We want to be winners. We want to be the people that everyone else is watching. And you're not going to become a winner while you're watching winners, right? The reality is those athletes are exceptionally good at what they do because they put in the time to be exceptional at what they do.
There you go.
Right? They didn't get there because they were watching another person play a game. They got there because they put the time in to be exceptional. They got there because they took the time in to be the first ones on the field before their teammates. And they got there because they were the last ones to leave the field. They got there because even when they're not on the field, they're reading their playbooks or they're home, doing additional exercises or strengthening. They're doing whatever they have to do. Michael Jordan was great. LeBron James is great because they're the hardest. They were the most talented, but yet they worked the hardest. So you're not going to get there by watching other people be great.
And I don't think this is an indictment on anybody. I think it's more of a mindset on Dan. I only have a few successful entrepreneurs that sit down and watch this stuff. I'm not saying you can't do it.
But you
However,
know what? Think about it. They're successful. They could afford to sit there and watch a football game.
That's true.
Right? When you broke, you can't afford to watch a football game. You got to be reading or doing something that's going to make your mind or person or your body better to achieve your goals. That watching broke people watch games make me laugh, man.
Myron Gold has said that, man. He's like, man, if you ain't got your money right and you watching football, man, you are stupid.
Like, at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. Those guys are making shitloads of money to play in that field that day, right? You think they give a shit? You're so concerned. You say, oh, my team won. Nah, my team is at home. My team is my family. That's my team. That's my team. Those guys on the field ain't my team. I'm happy whoever wins. I don't care who wins. But either way, whoever wins and loses are making a ton of money. Everybody on that team make a ton of money. So what do I care if they win or lose? They ain't putting money in my pocket. It ain't making my life any better.
All right, we got to bring you down a little bit, Dan. Look, man, good to see y'all. Give Dan a follow, usalandventures.com. No, what is it? What's your channel,
USA
Dan?
Land Ventures, yep.
USA Land Ventures is your YouTube channel. Get those likes up. And we are working on something for you guys. Please make sure you give us a follow so when we help you manage your rental property. Dan, let's let you go, but I got to ask.
Acquiring it is the easy part. Managing it is the tough part.
All right.
That's the truth.
I'll see
Take care, everyone.
Close this thing. I don't even know.